and some of these parents that are doing crazy things for their adult kids. If you realize in high school that you're still packing their lunch, it's just because you were doing it and you didn't stop. So now stop.
So today we are going to talk about some very practical ways we can make life difficult for our kids. And this is a really helpful, going to be a helpful podcast in discipling the next generation.
I was going to say, this is a podcast about helping our kids to mature. That's a way better spin.
Yeah, that's kind of the nurturing mom spin. So, but you know, what we try to do on this podcast, and really, I mean, it's kind of the heartbeat of Maven, is to equip the next generation, which is a huge task, especially given such a hostile, aggressive, secular culture that we live in. And I think a lot of us parents, grandparents, youth pastors, leaders, we feel that difficulty. And so we need allies, we need resources. And hopefully that's where Maven comes in your life. We hope that as we equip the next, or as we seek to equip the next generation and disciple the next generation, we know that one of our primary tasks is to help equip you. And so we pray. I mean, we pray before our podcast recordings every time. But our desire is that these the podcasts and our Maven conference and the events that we do, that these will help contribute to equipping you. And so we hope that you've been blessed by them, and that they're challenging you and ultimately having an impact on your kids. But one of the things that you need to know about Maven is that we are donor supported. And we have a team of men and women and families and churches that support our work and make it possible to do what we do. And what we really want to do is continue to expand this work. We want to reach as many parents out there as possible to help encourage them with this kind of tool and all that we do at Maven. And so I want to encourage you, this month in September, we are actively seeking 50 new partners who will join forces with us to help bring a Christian worldview to the church, to parents, adults, leaders, those who are discipling the next generation, in order that we can then bring a Christian worldview to the next generation. So I want to encourage you, if you are able to, and willing, and you see the vision of Maven and want to stand with us and really be a true partner in this work, I'd encourage you to consider being one of those 50 new monthly partners. And in fact, one of the things that we want to help equip you with, if you make a commitment in the month of September to be a regular monthly giver, we will send you some resources to help equip you. And what we're going to do is send you 6 videos from our recent Maven conference in 2021, where the theme of the conference was answering kids' tough questions. And so you'll hear from Jay Warner Wallace, Elisa Childers, Sean McDowell, myself, on a number of different topics. There'll be 6 different videos that we want to kind of say thank you, but also just equip you to continue to make a difference in the lives of the next generation of Christ followers. So I want to encourage you, consider that. Consider being one of those 50 new partners, so that we can continue to do this incredible podcast where I get to exhibit and just put on display for everyone my humor, and you get to laugh at my jokes. I mean, this is one of my favorite parts, is when you just laugh at my jokes, Erin. So
everyone knows why we're married now, because they can see that you like to make jokes and I like to laugh. So
that's called chemistry. That's chemistry right there. I make jokes, you laugh at them, and we're all happier for it.
On our first date, you knew, because I laughed at all your jokes.
I did. And, but you know what? Helping disciple our kids is no joke.
That was a bad transition.
Oh, I thought it was pretty good. Pretty smooth transition.
So this is a part 2 of the podcast. And I if you haven't listened to the first one that came out last week, go back and listen to it, because we do lay a foundation for how we view struggling, how we should view struggling and difficulties, and how we want to be parents that get out of the way of allowing our kids to mature, to learn perseverance, to grow in their character. And so we talked about that, the reasons why, and some of that in the first. Yeah.
Oh, sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay. In the first one we talked about
developing the theology.
Yeah.
The worldview, which when we'll say this again and again and again, we can't cut that short. And unfortunately, the evangelical church has been known for its shallowness in thinking about our convictions, our theology, our Christian worldview. We need to be people who are thoughtful and to realize there's a deep connection between that kind of reflection, that kind of thoughtfulness, that developing of a biblical worldview, and then our practical actions. So often we want to just jump to, give me the 3 steps that are going to solve this problem. And if you skip that last podcast, you got to stop this one right now, and you got to go back and you got to listen to that one, because it's so foundational to the things that we're going to say here. And this is what the Apostle Paul models for us in most of his epistles. Mm-hmm. He models first reflection on theology. Mm-hmm. You'll see the first 2 or 3 chapters of an epistle is about theology, about the greatness of Christ, the deity of Christ. I'm thinking of maybe Philippians. And then it's the second half where he gets into a lot of the practical stuff. Yeah. And
I was thinking of Ephesians, but you thought of Philippians. But yeah, it's so true. And if we don't know why this matters, then we don't get the other part of Paul's books. His letters. We don't understand why we would do these practical things that we're going to talk about, and then we don't persevere in those things, because we'll just go to what's easiest in the moment, which is such an easy tendency as human beings to just do what's easiest in the moment. But if we know why something matters, we're much more likely to stick to it, to persevere through the more difficult thing. And we would argue this is the better, more difficult thing.
Yeah. So our theology sustains us. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, with that being said, we've laid some theological foundation in the last episode. We want to get into the practical stuff. So we're just going to go through just a list of things that we've maybe done, we've experimented with, we've seen work out that seem to help put our kids in situations where they can struggle, they can face some difficulties, and grow from that. Yeah. And really begin to develop this from the earliest of ages. In fact, you were about to say something, and I'm going to pause my thoughts for you.
Our motto, to dive into the practical, one motto that we heard years and years ago from a friend, Carol Joy Side. We heard this at a seminar she was doing actually in homeschooling, but we just applied this to all areas of life with our kids. But the motto that we have now and have had for probably 15 years or more is never do for your kids what they can do for themselves. So never do for your kids what they can do for themselves. That motto has served us well when they're toddlers all the way through teenagers, because it's not doing for them what they can do for themselves. So it's having realistic expectations of what they can do. And then when they can do stuff, let them do it.
Even if they don't do it as well as you do. I think that's a big struggle for parents, right? Yes. Well, yeah, okay, they can do it, but they can't do it as well as me. So for instance, maybe you've got a 6 or 7 year old, and we will have them, maybe clear the table and wipe down their spot or something like that. Well, we know we can do that better, right? So it might be tempting to just say, it's easier for me to do it, and I'll clean it, and I'll have it the way I want. Mm-hmm. Well, that would be short-sighted. because what we're trying to do is develop something in our kids over the long term. And so sometimes as a parent, I got to say, okay, I got to let go of control here. And I may have to work more on myself to be able to allow them to do that thing for themselves, because I know, again, there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger target, their character.
Yeah.
And
knowing that when you're learning something new, in this case, we're talking about learning something new, that will mean almost always that there is some struggle, initial struggle in anything that you're learning new, a new skill or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Now, just so everyone knows, this is a general rule. It's a motto. It doesn't mean in every single circumstance, in every single moment, we are going to follow this. There's
that we never give grace or help a kid out. Of course not. It's a motto is a general thing. And I think for us, it's been a good thing to remember that we don't want to do things they can do for themselves in general, because they learn so much from having to do things for themselves. Now, before we get into like some practical examples, I think it's a good time to think about, because a lot of times when I've done this talk with different parent groups.
By the way, just so you know, this is a lot of this materials from a talk that Erin gives. And because this is we think this is such an important topic in this day and age. So basically, we're just stealing all of your material, honey, from your talk here.
Well, not really, but anyway. So, but what was I saying? Oh, so when I'm talking to live people, a lot of times I'll get the question about, in the topic of allowing our kids to struggle, a lot of parents think right away about bullying and struggles that kids will have in school. So maybe we can just address that right away, because the motto, never do for your kids what they can do for themselves. As I said, it has the part that says that they can do for themselves. There are situations that our kids get into that they need our help.
Yes.
And what we are not advocating for is that you just, like maybe the stereotypical dad in the 1950s show of like, if the school bully's bullying you, go to school and punch him in the face, like you go and handle this situation. Bullying looks so different today too, especially with social media and all that stuff. And there are lots of situations that our kids really do need our help.
Yeah, so there's
not
some
what
balance
we're talking
here.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, this is in the context of our responsibilities to protect our kids as well.
Yeah.
So we're not saying let your kids be overwhelmed, and although there may be a time when being a little overwhelmed is okay, but something like I think bullying is a great example. There's appropriate protection.
Yeah, that's
and so part of it is knowing our kids, knowing what they can handle, but in general, we're not doing things that they can do for themselves. So handling 3 kids at school who are picking on your one kid, that's overwhelming. And you're saying, no, you can tough that out. Those are situations that we're talking about where, no, that's where stepping in when kids can't handle something on their own is appropriate. So just need to clarify that.
Yeah. I remember a time where one of our kids in school was having a hard time with the teacher, and it just seemed like the teacher was just kind of going after or being hard on her or whatever. That was a situation where, we tried to advocate from home. Okay, try this, do this. Are you doing this? Are you, and then there's a time where it's appropriate for parents to get involved. And so we're all for that. It's because they do need our appropriate protection and help in times. So it is just, having wisdom on when to intervene. Maybe you get advice from other parents if you're thinking about intervening in a situation and you're not sure if you should let your kid handle it or if you should get involved. So I like to say that up front because it is something that I get a lot of questions about. And we're not advocating just to throw your kids out there and let them just handle the culture and all that will come with that on their own.
Yeah. And suffering is another area.
Yeah.
We're not talking about like in the situation where maybe, you know, parents are getting divorced or there's a death of a loved one, or maybe a loved one, a family member is suffering some terminal illness. Mm-hmm. Like these are things that we walk with our kids through. So, some important clarifications.
When we're talking about allowing suffering in your kid's life, we're not talking about like, you know, abandoning them as they're grieving something or whatever. That's not the kind of, we're talking about just in a general sense, a struggling through situations that are appropriate for them to learn how to work through and do. And so,
I think some of these other practical steps will, start to flesh out a little bit more of that motto. But I think that's a helpful motto.
Yeah.
To say as a parent, to remind yourself, okay, I'm not going to do for my kids what they can do for themselves. Yeah. And kind of, you know, enable some of that, maybe whether it's entitlement or lack of resilience or lack of perseverance or any of that kind of thing. So, well, here would be one very practical thing that we've tried to do with the kids is not stepping in to help with a task after they failed the first time. So, okay, so you maybe take this motto and say, all right, I'm going to try this out. And you watch your kid and they fail at something, right? And then you just say, oh, okay. And then you swoop back in. That's where we try to say, no, okay, try that again. Give that another shot. Don't give up. And one thing that my kids hear from me a lot is, I'll ask them the question, how do you get better at something?
By practice.
Yeah, practicing, or even by failing. One of the ways that we get better at things is first failing at those things and then trying them again. And think about what that develops. We talk about resilience. That can develop resilience in your kids. That once they try something and they can't do it, their first response isn't, oh, I can't do this, Mom, help me, or Dad, help me. And they just give up immediately.
Yeah.
And if you see that in your kid, that might be something that you and I are enabling in them. And so what we might need to do is be very intentional in saying, I'm not going to step in. No, you can do that. I know you can do that. You just got to work a little bit harder at it. But oftentimes when a kid kind of cries out, our impulse for whatever reasons is to just jump right in and rescue them or, take it off their plate and we'll do it and we'll handle the task.
I'm thinking about when we've taught all the kids to tie their shoes, when they were little, and how the task of learning how to tie your shoe is difficult at first. It can be difficult and they'll just, give up. Or the first time they've had to do a chore, taking out the trash cans, maybe taking the trash cans to the curb for the trash, man to pick up the next day. And the trash can falls over and, oh, it's too heavy, all this stuff. And just instead of swooping in and doing it, letting them learn to struggle in these things. This is how we learn by doing it.
And it's not just the younger kids. Mm-hmm. This is something you're doing constantly throughout even the teenage years. So when your kids are in junior high or high school, whatever you deem appropriate, that they should be doing their own laundry. And for some of you, maybe your jaw just dropped and you thought, oh, my kids should do laundry when they're living in my house. Aren't I supposed to do the laundry? No, yeah, we've tried to teach all of our kids to be able to learn how to use the washer, use the dryer, and fold their own clothes. We want them to learn that skill before they get out of our house. And so it's typically around, I think, junior high that we've done that with each of the kids. And so now, the four kids that are at home, a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 14-year-old, they handle almost all of their own laundry. Yeah.
And actually, the 10-year-old's in training. I'm done doing people's laundry, so I'm training him earlier.
Well, what about me?
Oh, well.
You said you're done doing people's laundry, and
yeah,
that's
once I graduate
one of the
last one, I'm actually going to pass it back now over to you, and you're going to do ours for a few years.
Just to clarify, I do help with laundry, but we have a division of labor in our own home.
Yes, we do. So yeah, it's pushing them to in some of these things. And especially when they're young, it's teaching them to do some of the things for themselves. They're just learning actually self-care. So laundry is like in the self-care category of doing their own things, letting the 3-year-old struggle to put their shoe on.
Yeah.
And letting the 12-year-old struggle to get a stain out of a shirt.
Yeah.
Or
fold laundry in such a way that it actually fits in the drawers.
In the drawer, yeah. Or that something's especially with our girls, having certain clothes clean for certain events was a big deal. Or having their uniform ready for game day. Well, if they're old enough to play in a high school, junior high sport, they're certainly old enough to know how to push the buttons on a washer and make sure their uniform's clean.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Here's another one. Make your kids earn things. Don't just give everything to your kids. And so what this does is it creates some struggle for a kid, right? They have to maybe work to get money. So there's an obstacle. I want this thing and I don't have the money. That's an obstacle. That's a little bit of a struggle for a kid. So then what are we tempted to do? We're tempted to swoop in and, just go buy that thing for the kid. And I think sometimes for dads, I don't know, I feel like this is more of a temptation where I want to get my kids, things that they want. And I like to do things like that for them and gift giving. And so I have to hold back on that temptation. Otherwise, like, especially if I take Jonah to the store, like he's number 5, he's the youngest. And I know that I'm never going to be able to buy a Star Wars figure for my kids again.
I think this is a personality thing more than a dad and mom thing, because I think personality-wise, I'm just more of a saver. Like I'm more of I do the checkbook kind of thing. Yeah. So I think this is one area that you love.
Let's clarify.
You love to give
You
gifts.
balance the checkbook, but we work on our finances together.
We do, and that has helped to save our marriage. But you personality-wise, you love getting gifts and giving gifts. Like that's something about you. So this could be harder for someone maybe who has that tendency that you want to, do fun things with your kids and bless your kids, and that's great and wonderful. But the way to teach our kids maturity in financial things is to teach them the value of $1, the value of money. And the only way to teach them the value of money that I'm aware of is to show them that is correlated with work, that you earn it and then you get the joy of the fruits of your labor and you get to buy something that you save up for. Yeah, so,
and work can be hard and it can be a struggle. And so there's value in struggling and then having a monetary reward and then being able to buy something for themselves.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the most rewarding things that you'll see in your kid is that sense of working hard towards something, saving up, especially when it's something significant and big, and then being able to purchase that thing on their own. And there's a healthy sense of pride. I mean, if you want to build a kid's self-esteem, right? We're told in our culture, a very therapeutic culture, that it's just all about what we tell the kids. There's nothing that builds a kid's self-confidence like working hard, earning something, and then being able to purchase something for themselves. And I remember Ella was, I think, about 10 years old. And she wanted a Disneyland pass. We live in Southern California. We're like 10, 15 minutes away from Disneyland. And we've had passes every once in a while. But they're pricey. And so one particular year we didn't have passes, or we hadn't had passes for several years, I think. And so she wanted to get a pass. And I think one of her siblings had a pass and she'd be able to go with. So she started saving up, and it was around like $350 that she had to save up as a 10-year-old to get this pass. And I remember the last dollars that she had to earn, she earned through recycling cans. And I took her and her younger brother, who was recycling with her as well. And we went to the recycling place. We, dumped all the cans in the whatever you call those things, canisters. That we weighed them. We got the money. We divided it between the two of them, and she had enough money. It was the final amount she needed to get that Disneyland pass. And we're driving away, from that recycling place, driving home, and I can see she's reflective. She's kind of looking out the window and she's thinking, and then unprompted, she says to me, Dad, it feels so much better when you earn something than when it's just given to you. And that was her own reflection on that. And that was, I don't know how many months she had to work hard and save up. And there was some struggle there for her, but the reward was so rich. And so that's just another way that we can help kids learn this lesson, is by not just giving them things, but having them earn it and work for it.
The benefit of this too, I think, is something that, especially moms who are typically the ones who are at this doing the shopping in general. So I'm just picturing like a mom with some little kids, at Target or at the store, and they're asking for all these things. You hear it all the time when we're at the store. Oh, Mom, can I get this? Dad, can I get this? And the harassing that, please, can I please get it? Can I please get it? Well, first of all, you want to teach them to obey you. When you say no, you can't get it. But this kind of learning to save up for things actually mitigates with that constant nagging that can develop with kids and asking for things, or this expectation that every time you go to the store, you get something.
Yeah.
You're there actually for groceries and not for toys, and they want it. Well, when you can answer them and say, well, do you have the money to buy it? And the answer is no. Okay. Or, well, I don't know. Well, how much is it? Oh, it's $15. Do you have $15? No. Okay. So then this is something to save up for. And then when you have the money, I'll bring you back and you can buy it. And so it actually can help with this. Sometimes what becomes a nightmare for parents is going shopping with the kids, because they nag and nag and nag for treats or toys or whatever. This is one way to help with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's other lessons too. Just think about, it's not just working so that you can buy what you want.
Yeah.
But even then, having your kids work hard, struggle, earn money, and then say, okay, let's figure out where we want to give.
Oh, giving.
Right. We want to give to God's work here. We want to support, maybe a missionary, or, a ministry at church, or even give in the offering plate at church, or save. Right. So there's all kinds of other lessons here as well. But this is in terms of trying to help figure out ways in which we can kind of let go a little bit, get out of the way. I think, like you said in the last podcast, and let our kids work and struggle and deal with some of those trials. That's, I think, one of the key things that we can do. This is yours right here. This is one that you've kind of taught me, or that you've made explicit in our family.
Is making the kids carry their own stuff.
Yeah. So this would be our third practical step here?
Yeah.
Have your kids carry their own things.
Yeah. And this, I think, again, can start if you're listening, you have little ones, and the 3-year-old wants to bring his dinosaurs to the store or to go somewhere, or the little girl wants to bring a baby doll in the little diaper bag. And you say, if you bring it, then you have to carry it, because mommy has enough to carry. And I came to this, I think, just from having so many kids and realizing I can't carry everything. So it would be like, no, you can't bring it. Or, okay, if you're going to bring it, then you have to carry it, which is why I started getting the kids little backpacks of their own that they could put on their back, and they could put their stuff in, but then it was, you have to carry it if you're going to bring it. And when your arms get tired and you say, Mom, can you hold this? The answer is going to be no, because you brought it or whatever, but it's, or no, you set it down and then you're responsible for picking it up. I think this can start when they're little. And I don't do it to be mean or lazy as a mom. No, I don't want to carry your stuff. It's just learning that, I'm responsible for my own things. And I think it can start little. And I do think about so many parents, as I referenced in the first podcast on this topic, just they carry their kids' stuff for them. And there's so many times I see moms just struggling out to the soccer field carrying all this stuff, and their kids who are able-bodied are just kicking the soccer ball and running off as if they shouldn't be also helping to bring the snack bag and all the other stuff that comes with it. Or I'm just picture too, in parking lot after parking lot, seeing moms struggle to load the car, and able-bodied children who are able to help just don't. They just get in the car. Yeah. So teaching our kids to care for their own stuff. Yeah. If you're dropping them off at practice, they can carry their own thing. Yeah. And kind of a tweak on this too is having them carry one another's stuff. So helping a younger brother or sister carry their bag or their ball or whatever it is. That could be a good way for them not only to think, hey, I have kind of responsibilities for my own things and I need to take care of that, but also then looking at how I can serve other people in the family. Yeah. And I think too about how with our little ones, how I've gotten in the habit of doing this, especially I'm thinking about unloading groceries. We pull up at home, everyone unload the groceries, and even letting the little ones struggle to carry a bag. You don't give them the bag with the eggs. You give them the bag with things that are more sturdy, but you let them struggle to bring it up the stair into the house, whatever. And that builds confidence that you, and I've said to, especially the boys, you're strong enough to carry this one, you carry it, and just what that does, it for their own stuff, but then also just contributing, to the family. And you're teaching them, we all help out here. We all contribute. The world doesn't revolve around you. Yeah. We all help. Yeah. And I think the long-term goal is ultimately to have my kids carry all of my stuff, right? I mean, that's really where we're heading with that one eventually. That you walk up to the soccer field and have to carry nothing. Yeah. Or that my kids eventually will carry me when I need it. So that's another, there's lots of benefits to what we're saying here, folks. So, okay. Here's number 4, organize the house so that your kids' things are accessible for them to reach, so that they can do those things for themselves. Yeah, it's similar to this, but so that they can pick up their own stuff. Make it so that even little ones can start to put, even if they're not maybe washing and folding, but that they can put stuff in their drawers because they can reach them. Okay, so put like their clothing down lower in the lower drawers. Yeah, store their shoes somewhere that they can put their shoes away. Have their Legos in a thing that you can pull out. They can put it in there and put the bin away. Yeah. So even in the way you design your home, being thoughtful that you're going to let them, do things. Yeah. And like, we were just at my sister's house in Colorado, and she has. Are you going to criticize your sister right now here on the podcast? No, I thought it was awesome because we went and they are in a newer home, and the lower drawers, she has this big drawer and her kids unload the dishwasher. But all their plastic plates and stuff are all in this lower drawer. So not only are they unloading the dishwasher and putting them where they can reach it, but then at mealtime, she says, get out your plates and your cups, and they can reach all of their stuff. So that's what that's what I have in mind, that they can do the work of things and that you allow them to do the works of things because it's designed in a way that helps them to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was number 4. 5.
have your kids participate in the work of the family at home. So this is like the idea of chores, which we've done a whole podcast on chores. So if you haven't listened to that one, go back and listen to that one.
Yeah, and I think in that podcast we mentioned specific chores, but just quickly, a 2 to 4-year-old can clear the table, set the table, ask people what they want to drink, empty trash can. They can even clean a mirror with a paper towel.
And it will not be done as well as you or I could do it.
No.
But there's huge value in that.
Yeah, they can help sort laundry by colors. There's all kinds of things they can do. And yes, it'll slow it down, and it's not going to be as fast and efficient, but you're building towards something. And so you have that mindset, of course.
Yeah, and just to highlight, you said 2 to 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
I just know for a lot of parents out there thinking my 2-year-old can do a chore or contribute or help. Yes, yeah, they absolutely can. And often that's actually easier at those ages to get them to do stuff.
Get them in the habit. It is actually true. When you start the habit young, it just becomes, this is what we do here.
Becomes part of the culture of your family.
Yeah. 5 to 7-year-olds can, unload dishwasher. My sister's kids were doing that. The little ones were help with dinner, vacuum. Actually, the last time we bought a vacuum, I took our 7-year-old with me to Costco. And I liked at Costco, they have them out of the box so you can actually look at them and see them. So I pulled it off of the display and I said to him, okay, go up and down the aisle pushing this vacuum. And why did I do that? Because it was his job at home to vacuum the floors. So I had to make sure he was strong enough to push the vacuum. So I took him with me to buy it. So things like that, make sure they can do some of this stuff. Buy a vacuum that's not so heavy that they can push, and your little one can help in contributing to that.
See, we're even giving advice on how to buy vacuums here. I mean, this is the most helpful, practical podcast I think we've ever done.
And then just as they get older, like an 8 to 11-year-old, that they are packing their own lunches for school and for outings and stuff, that they can start packing their own food,
I bet there's someone listening right now who has a senior in high school and they're packing their lunches for their senior in high school. And if that's you should feel guilty. I mean, no, don't feel guilty, but maybe reconsider that.
Well, this is like what we talked about in the first podcast, and some of these parents that are doing crazy things for their adult kids. If you realize in high school that you're still packing their lunch, it's just because you were doing it and you didn't stop. So now stop. Now stop and just don't do it anymore and say, hey, I realize you can actually pack your own lunch. And the blessing is that I buy all the food. So you're welcome. It's all free. And you pack your own lunch. So even if you're hearing some of the stuff and thinking, oh, shoot, I'm not doing that. Well, just start tomorrow, you know. And
it doesn't mean you love your kid any less.
No.
I'm just thinking about I just think, for like a nurturing mom who's like, I love to pack my lunch for my kid. And it's one of my gifts to them. And,
Are you saying this to me?
Well, in so many words, yes.
Yes. I'm not that I'm packing our senior in high school's lunch, but yeah, I get more sentimental about doing things for the kids because I think, well, that's the way that I care for them. But we really, mom or dad, if you're the one doing it, it is for their good that you stop.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't mean that there aren't times when you would pack their lunch. You would do that. But then it's not something that they maybe feel entitled to
or expect.
Yeah. It actually it helps to foster thankfulness.
Yeah.
Like when it's done every day for them, it's something that they could be doing themselves, but then you do it for them. Then there's this expectation that, this is mom's supposed to make me lunch.
Yeah.
But when then it's their job, and then you step in at certain times and say, hey, let me do this for you. Then oh, wow, it can help foster some thankfulness.
Yeah. Actually, our daughter needed her uniform cleaned the other day for work, and I was doing a load, and she was like, oh, shoot, I forgot to. And I said, oh, I'll wash it for you. And she was like, oh, really? And I said, yeah, give it to me. I have a load on. So that's the kind of thing. Of course, we are gracious. Of course, we jump in and help pack a lunch if they're running late for school or, things like that. But just that the habit would be that they're doing more and more for themselves and then for the family. And the great thing too is, really the sky's the limit becomes what they can do in the home. They can do once they're teenagers, they're as big and able-bodied as we are, and they can really help in maintaining the home, and it's needed.
Cleaning the toilets, doing the dishes, vacuuming the house, cleaning the windows, all of that.
And people might be saying, okay, wait, what does this have to do with struggle? I thought this podcast...
It has nothing to do with struggle. It has everything to do with us ultimately getting out of our work. So
it has everything to do with struggle and just the life on this earth of having to do things we don't want to do, things that aren't fun, but things that are necessary, and that they're, we learn these skills and that it's helpful in our maturity and our character when we don't want to clean, but we go ahead and clean the bathroom. When we're tired and we don't want to do the dishes, but we get up and do the dishes anyways. These are character forming activities that we should not stop our kids from participating in.
And a high school boy who has to clean a dirty toilet, for him, that's a real trial. And then now we can bring in James chapter 1. Consider it all joy.
Pure joy.
My son.
Pure joy.
When you encounter this trial of cleaning this dirty bathroom, that, 75% of it is your fault anyway. So,
okay, before we end, just a couple more things. And one thing I think on this topic of struggle, I think it's important to expose our kids to people who have real struggles in life. And, most of us live pretty easy American lives, and of course we all have different trials and struggles that will come. But if you're kind of just in a typical time of life where, you don't have a lot of struggles going on, exposing our kids on a regular basis to people who are struggling in different ways. I'm thinking of elderly people who it's harder for them to do things, that older people would be a part of our kids' lives. And so they see the struggle that an older person has to go through to do things. And then, of course, I would hope that would be maybe an area that your family could serve someone in. Exposing them to people who are homeless, who are struggling in that way.
Like through a ministry or a shelter.
Through ministry.
Some kind of outreach.
Yeah. I even think if you're a 2-parent home, that you would have a part of your life a single parent, and that your kids see someone who's struggling to, do all the things that normally 2 people do, and that one person is doing it. And so you're just exposing your kids to people who actually have struggles, who have real things that they have to persevere through, so that it does. And what this does is gives them perspective, I guess, is what.
Reorients their perspective, I think, is huge.
It's one of the reasons why I read to the kids from the Voice of the Martyrs magazine, because it exposes us to Christians around the world. So it gives us this perspective of, in America, Christians actually have it really quite well. And that there are Christians around the world that struggle and are persecuted and all these things. So it gives the kids a perspective that you can't have just in and of yourself and in your life.
Yeah, I was going to say biographies is also a good way to expose them. Mm-hmm. So reading the stories of Christians is another. Gosh, if you know a friend who's got just an incredible testimony, we just don't share testimonies with one another as much.
Yeah.
You know, we were often told that the testimony is a tool for evangelism, but I think it's actually probably more primarily fits with within the body of Christ, us sharing testimonies of God's work in our life to encourage one another and spur one another on. And then I think the last thing we kind of say in really to kind of cover all of what we've covered here practically is that in any of this stuff, whether it's work or chores or making their own lunch or whatever it is, when they fail, when they do struggle and they end up failing, that we would be supportive and gracious, maybe letting them face some of their own consequences, but still being supportive as they face those consequences, and not looking at our kids with disappointment and saying, see, if you would have done it my way, this never would have happened, kind of thing. But realizing that we want them to learn how to face the consequences of their own actions and struggle that way, learn to take ownership of their own actions, but that we'll be gracious and supportive and help how we can, and not necessarily to rescue them out of those consequences, but to be supportive in those consequences. And that's a huge important distinction.
Yeah, to watch our words when they do fail or struggle at something, that we don't rejoice in that, or like you mentioned, really throwing it in their face.
Well, we've got a great illustration from a friend recently whose son was in high school, was on the volleyball team, was a starter on this volleyball team, and it was like a playoff game.
Yeah.
And he ended up, he got caught cheating on a test, and the consequence was that he sat out that game. And she didn't go talk to the coach, and she didn't talk to the teacher and try to fix the situation.
Blame anyone else.
No, she had him take responsibility and face those consequences, and a valuable lesson was learned there.
Yeah, which is what we mentioned before. Sometimes it's just getting out of the way. It's not abandoning your kid in their struggle. It's being there with them, but allowing them to struggle. If they've been mean to another kid, taking them to go apologize. I'll go with you. I'll be there with you. Guess what? Mommy's had to apologize to people too, but you got to do it. And not letting them out of that. Don't let them out off the hook. Help them to face their failures, to face their struggles, to be there with them. And again, to watch your words. But to not let them get out of it, because as we read those scriptures, we know what these struggles do for our character. It's good for us. Yeah,
and I just think of other fruit that's produced by that. Thinking a kid who learns how to take responsibility for their own actions is not let off the hook, doesn't have mom and dad come in and rescue them, or have mom and dad come in and blame someone else for their kids' actions. And those of you who work in maybe education, you've experienced this, where a kid does something, doesn't take responsibility, kids come and they blame the teacher. I mean, what kind of lessons are we teaching our kids? Yeah. And no wonder there's so many people in our culture now who don't have the maturity, and instead one of the kind of the immature fruits of this kind of thing is a lot of the over victimization that we might feel, and there's no resilience. Now, of course, absolutely there are real victims out there. We're not talking about that, but we're talking about where we over-identify with being a victim. Oh, woe is me, everything happens to me, people are out to get me, kind of thing. Yeah. And instead of, I'm going to face up to what I did and build some emotional resilience that way, to say I'm going to own up to these things that I've done. So there's a lot of character fruit that's produced in this. Yeah. So all that to say, work hard to let your kids struggle. It's a little maybe counterintuitive to parents who love their kids, want to nurture their kids. And of course, this is all in the context of a loving, nurturing, warm relationship. But it's also with this larger view that our primary purpose with our kids, one of our primary purposes is to help them grow in character, not give them everything they want, not, give them all the pleasures of this world, but to really help them become conformed to the image of Christ.
Maven exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ. To find out more, check out maventruth.com.